The alien ship floated above the quiet planet, shining like a black shadow against the stars. Inside the command hall stood General Karath, leader of one of the oldest warrior races in the galaxy. His scales glowed faint green under the lights, his eyes sharp and proud, his voice heavy with power. For Karath, humans were nothing but a small, fragile race, unworthy of respect. That night he faced them for the first time. A human commander had arrived, calm and steady, dressed not in bright armor but in simple gray uniform. The man's eyes did not show fear, only determination. He offered words Karath did not expect. "We come not to fight but to join hands," the human said, his voice strong but soft. "Together we can face greater dangers together. We can build a safer galaxy." Karath laughed, his deep voice echoing across the hall like thunder. "Humans, allies," he said, raising his chin. "You are weak, your bones break easily. Your lives are short, your ships are small. Why would the great Karath, son of the eternal warriors, need such fragile creatures by his side?" The human did not flinch, he did not argue. He only gave a small smile, as if Karath's insult was nothing more than wind. Then he said one line that cut through the pride of the alien. "You may not understand us now," the commander whispered, "but one day, you will see what makes humans strong." Karath's warriors roared with laughter, slamming their weapons on the ground. The sound shook the hall, and the alien general raised his hand for silence. He pointed his claw at the human and shouted, "Go back to your small blue world, human. We do not need you. We do not want you, and we will not bow to your strange ways." The human bowed his head politely. He turned to leave, his steps calm and measured. Not once did he show anger. Not once did he beg. Not once did he fear. Karath expected him to look broken, but the man's eyes carried something else. Confidence. Unshaken, as the human ship left orbit, Karath's second-in-command asked, "Why did he look so calm, General? Why did he walk away as if he has already won?" Karath growled, hiding the strange unease in his chest. "He is foolish, he is blind, he is weak, that is all." But deep in his heart, Karath felt a small spark of doubt. He had faced many enemies, many rivals, many proud rulers. All of them broke. All of them feared his name, but this human. He had not broken, he had not feared. Instead, he had left as if he carried a secret the alien could not see. That night, Karath stood at the wide window of his ship. The stars burned bright, the human vessel was gone. Leaving only silence, he clenched his claws, whispering to himself, "Humans are nothing. They will never matter." Yet the words did not feel true. Somewhere deep inside, hidden beneath layers of pride, Karath wondered, what if the human was right? What if one day he would see what makes humans strong? But Karath shook his head and pushed the thought away. He was a warrior, a leader, the son of eternal conquerors. He would not bend, he would not doubt, he would not regret. At least not yet. And so the refusal was sealed. The choice was made. The alien who mocked a human would soon learn that his greatest mistake had just begun. Days turned into weeks, and Karath thought little of the humans. He believed they had returned to their small blue planet, licking their wounds after his refusal. But whispers began to move through the galaxy. Whispers of human actions that were not normal. Whispers that unsettled even the proud general. Karath's scouts brought strange reports. A weak farming world was attacked by raiders, its people begging for help. No warrior empire moved to protect them. No rich trade fleet cared, but humans did. Their ships, small and simple, arrived late at night, carrying not weapons of greed but supplies, food and medicine. They fought the raiders, yes, but when the battle ended, they stayed, they rebuilt homes, they healed wounds, they comforted children who were not their own. Karath listened in silence, his claws tapping on the arm of his throne. What do they gain from this? He growled, his voice low. Helping the weak brings no treasure, no power, no honor. His second-in-command nodded quickly. They are fools, General. They waste their strength on useless creatures. Yet in the dark of night, Karath could not sleep. He remembered the calm face of the human commander. He remembered the words, "One day you will see what makes humans strong." The alien shook his head angrily, refusing to believe it. Still, the image of human ships protecting strangers would not leave his mind. More reports came. Another world had been left in ruins by a great storm. Its cities drowned, its people starving. Again, the great empires laughed, saying the planet was finished. Not worth saving, but again humans came. They sent engineers to rebuild. They sent doctors to heal. They sent soldiers not to conquer, but to dig graves with their own hands. Kairoth's council sneered when they heard. Humans are not warriors, one elder said. They are servants, nothing more. But Kairoth was quiet. His eyes sharp, his thoughts heavy. For the first time in his long life, the alien general felt something strange. It was not anger, not pride, not hunger for battle, it was confusion. Why would humans risk so much for others when no one risked anything for them? He began to watch from afar, through secret reports, through stolen transmissions, through whispers carried by spies, and each time the humans did the same. They offered help not for power, not for wealth, but simply because someone needed it. One night, Kairoth walked alone through the halls of his ship. The stars glowed outside the great window, but his mind was far away. His people believed strength was shown only through war, through blood, through victory, but these humans, they showed strength in another way, a way Kairoth could not understand, yet could not ignore. He clenched his fist, his claws digging into his palm. They are not strong, he whispered to himself. They only play the part of saviors. But deep inside, he felt the weight of a question he did not want to ask. What if their way was another kind of strength, greater than his own? The galaxy laughed at humans, yes. Other empires mocked them as soft, weak, foolish. But those same empires accepted human aid when disaster came. They accepted it quietly, ashamed to admit they needed it. And slowly Kairoth saw a pattern. Humans were weak in body but strong in will. They were fragile in form but unbreakable in spirit. Kairoth's warriors continued to mock them. Let them waste their lives, one soldier said. When the real war comes, they will be crushed. The general nodded in silence, but his mind was not at ease. Because every report told him the same truth. Humans never stopped, they never gave up, and worst of all, they never asked for anything in return. One evening, Kairoth stood before his war council, the hall filled with voices of pride and arrogance. They laughed at the humans, they insulted them. They cursed them as cowards, but Kairoth did not laugh. Instead, he stared at the star map before him, glowing with battles, empires, and wars. He whispered words his council could not hear. If they are fools, then why do they never fall? And so the seed of doubt grew larger. Kairoth had refused the human once, mocking their weakness. But now he saw something he could not name. Something strange, something dangerous, something powerful the human way. Little did he know, that strange way would soon decide the fate of his people and his own life. The war drums of Kairoth's empire echoed across the stars. Their fleets moved with fire and steel. Their warriors roared with pride. For centuries, no enemy had broken them. No rival had stood tall against their might, but this time, the storm came from a place they did not expect. The enemy called themselves the Vorga, a ruthless race with ships built like black blades. They did not seek honor, they did not fight for pride. They fought only to destroy. Their fleets moved like shadows, cutting through defenses, leaving only silence behind. World after world fell, their fires burning bright across the galaxy. Kairoth stood at the bridge of his flagship, his claws clenched on the railing. He had expected another easy victory, another display of his empire's glory. But the reports told another story. His fleets were losing, his warriors were dying, his people were crying out for help. For the first time in his life, the great general felt the sting of defeat. His commanders shouted, his soldiers bled, yet the Vorga kept coming. Their weapons pierced even the strongest shields. Their armies showed no fear. Kairoth's empire, once unshakable, now trembled under the weight of the storm. In the council chamber, his advisors argued. Call for allies, one said, his voice desperate. No, we stand alone. Another growled, slamming his fist on the table. But deep inside, all of them feared the truth. Their strength was not enough. Kairoth stared at the star map, glowing red with lost worlds. His chest tightened as he remembered the human commander's calm face. Those words echoed in his mind once more. One day you will see what makes humans strong. He pushed the thought away with anger, but it returned like a wound that would not heal. As the Vorga advanced, Kairoth's fleets broke further. Cities burned, children screamed, warriors fought to the last breath. The empire that once mocked others now found itself desperate. Desperate for help, desperate for hope. One night, as the general sat in silence, a new report arrived. It was not from his fleets, not from his allies, but from spies watching the humans. The report told a strange story. Human ships had entered the war zone, not with armies, but with aid. They carried supplies, medicine, food. They pulled alien survivors from burning cities. They gave shelter to those Karoth's empire could not protect. Karoth's claws shook as he read the report. They come into our space. Not to conquer, but to help, he whispered. His second-in-command frowned. They insult us with pity, General. They try to shame us by showing mercy. But Karoth did not answer, because deep inside shame already burned in his chest. He remembered standing tall before the human commander, rejecting him with laughter. He remembered mocking their weakness, spitting on their offer of alliance. And yet now, in his people's darkest hour, it was the humans who arrived first, not with guns pointed at his throat, but with open hands. The Vorga attack grew stronger. One of Karoth's greatest fortresses fell. His closest friend and fellow general was killed. The halls of the empire shook with grief. The warriors who once boasted of endless glory now whispered in fear. And Karoth, the proud general, felt his pride begin to crumble. On the battlefield, he saw something that haunted him. A human medical ship drifting among ruins, pulling both alien civilians and Karoth's wounded soldiers aboard. The humans treated them without hesitation. They did not ask for thanks. They did not demand loyalty. They simply worked, tireless and quiet, saving lives. Karoth's chest ached with something he had never known. It was not anger, not hatred, but shame. He whispered to himself, "They saved my people, even after I rejected them." The words felt heavy, cutting deeper than any blade. That night he stood before his warriors, his voice quieter than ever. "They fight with strength," he said, his eyes cold, "but the humans, they fight with something else, something we do not understand." His soldiers murmured in confusion, but none dared to question the tone in his voice. The first defeat had come not only on the battlefield, but inside the heart of Karoth himself. His pride cracked, his certainty shook. His eyes turned toward the humans he once mocked, and though he would not admit it aloud, a seed of regret had already begun to grow. The Vorga would keep attacking. The war was far from over. But Karoth now carried a weight heavier than any weapon. The knowledge that the humans he scorned might be the only hope his empire had left, and that thought terrified him more than the Vorga themselves. The war raged on, and the Vorga's shadow spread across the stars. Karoth's fleets fought with fire and rage, but their victories were short, their losses heavy. The proud empire of warriors was breaking, and the once unshakable general now stood at the edge of despair. One day a new report reached his ears. The humans had joined a battle on the far rim, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as defenders. They stood beside small colonies, beside weak races no one else cared to protect. Karoth had no choice but to see it with his own eyes. He ordered his ship to jump into the system, hiding behind the wreckage of war. Through the great windows of his bridge, he watched the humans fight for the first time. At first he saw weakness. Their ships were smaller, their weapons less powerful, their armor thin. Against the Vorga's black blades, the humans looked like prey waiting to be cut down, but then he saw something that froze him where he stood. The humans fought not with strength of body, but with strength of spirit. They did not run when outnumbered. They did not surrender when surrounded. They moved with strange unity, covering one another, sacrificing for one another. Every loss gave birth to new courage, not fear. Karoth's claws dug into the railing as he watched a single human ship dive into enemy fire. Its shields burned, its hull shattered, yet it rammed into a Vorga cruiser to protect a group of fleeing civilians. The ship was destroyed, but the colony ships escaped. The human captain's last words carried across the comms. "For the living, for tomorrow, never stop fighting." Karoth could not breathe. This was not how warriors fought. This was not the way of pride and honor. This was something else, something deeper, something he could not name. His second-in-command muttered beside him, "They throw their lives away like fools." But Karoth shook his head slowly, his eyes locked on the battlefield. "No," he whispered, "they give their lives, so others may live." The Vorga pressed harder, but the humans did not break. When one ship fell, another moved to cover the gap. When one soldier died, another took his place. It was as if their spirit was endless, unshakable, unbreakable. Karoth watched human marines fight on the ground. They were smaller than his warriors, weaker in muscle, slower in strength. Yet they stood in front of civilians, firing until their last breath. They fought not for glory, but for duty, not for empire, but for each other. And the strangest thing, they did not fight with hatred. Even as they bled, even as they fell, their voices carried hope. Hope that tomorrow would still come. Hope that the week would survive. Karath's heart shook, for he had never seen war fought with hope before. The battle ended in fire. The humans lost many ships, many lives, but the colony survived. The Vorga retreated, for once shaken by prey that refused to die. And when the survivors cried out in gratitude, the humans did not ask for tribute, they only said, "We will return if you need us." Karath turned away from the window. His chest heavy, his empire fought with pride. His people fought for honor, but the humans, they fought for life itself, for a future greater than themselves. That was their silent strength. In the council hall later, his commanders mocked again. They are reckless, they are weak, they fight like animals with no sense. But Karath's voice thundered over them. "Silence," he growled, his eyes burning. "You laugh at what you cannot understand. But I tell you this, their strength is not in their weapons. Their strength is not in their bodies, their strength is in something greater." The room fell quiet. None dared challenge the general's tone. But whispers spread. Was Karath beginning to doubt the old ways? Beginning to respect the humans that night alone? He remembered again the human commander's calm words. "One day you will see what makes humans strong." And now, after watching them bleed, after watching them endure, Karath knew. He was beginning to see it. But with that vision came fear. Because if humans truly carried such silent strength, then his refusal might already be the greatest mistake of his life. And in the darkness of his chamber, the proud warrior whispered the words he never thought he would. "They are stronger than us, though we cannot see how." The war was not over. The Vorga were not defeated, but Karath's heart had changed. The humans he once mocked now haunted his thoughts. And soon they would change more than just his mind. They would change his fate. The war dragged on, and the Vorga did not slow. Karath's empire fought with teeth and claws. Yet each victory cost more than it gave. Worlds once proud now lay in ruins. Warriors once fearless now carried doubt in their eyes, and in the heart of the storm, Karath felt the weight of something he had never known before. Loss, his closest friend, General Vare, had fought beside him for decades. They had shared battles, laughter, victories, and scars. But when the Vorga descended on the fortress of Drelkar, Vare stayed behind to hold the line. Karath ordered him to retreat. But Vare only smiled through the comms. "You still have a war to win, brother. Let me give you time." Moments later, the fortress fell and Vare was gone. Karath stood in silence before the ashes of Drelkar, his claws trembling for the first time. His heart felt hollow. Pride could not fill it. Honor could not heal it. The Empire whispered his name, still calling him strong, still calling him unbreakable, but inside, Karath was breaking at night. He remembered the humans. He remembered how they fought, not for themselves, but for each other. He remembered the human captain who sacrificed his ship to save fleeing civilians. And he thought of Vare, who did the same for him. Was this the strength humans had spoken of? The strength to give everything, not for pride, but for others. His council still raged with arrogance. "They bleed us, General, but we must not beg for help. We must stand alone." But Karath no longer believed those words. He saw his empire falling, he saw his people dying. He saw his friends smile before death, and he felt regret, bitter and sharp, one evening. As he looked over the star map, a voice returned to him. "One day, you will see what makes humans strong." Those words had haunted him since the day of refusal. Now they cut through his pride like a blade. For the first time, Karath wondered if he had chosen wrong. If mocking the humans had sealed his empire's fate. If his laughter had been the echo of his own downfall. His warriors still spoke of victory. But Karath no longer tasted victory in their battles. He tasted ashes, he tasted sorrow. On the battlefield, he saw more proof. Human aid ships kept appearing. Not to take territory, not to claim spoils, but to heal the wounded, to give shelter, to rebuild what the Vorga destroyed. Karath's soldiers, once proud, once hateful, now returned alive because of human hands. And still the humans asked for nothing. Karath's chest burned with shame. How could they help those who spat on them? How could they forgive when he had mocked them? How could they save lives when he had refused to save theirs? The turning point came in fire. Karath's fleet was cornered near the dying star of Karun. The Vorga had trapped them, their black ships closing in. The Empire's banner threatened to fall, and Karath felt the crushing weight of doom. But then, out of the burning light, human ships arrived. Not grand fleets, not endless armies, Just enough to break the trap. They fought with fury, with sacrifice, with unity. They pulled Karath's wounded soldiers aboard. They shielded his ships. They bought him time. Karath stood on his bridge, silent, watching humans bleed for his empire. Every blast, every scream, every sacrifice tore deeper into his pride. These were the same humans he had rejected, the same humans he had laughed at, and now they were saving him. When the battle ended, the Vorga retreated. Karath's fleet survived, but at great cost. He looked upon the human commander's ship, battered but unbowed, and for the first time in his long life, Karath felt something break inside him. He whispered to himself, "I was wrong." The words tasted bitter, but they were true. "I was blind," he added, his claws trembling, "and now, it may be too late." The great general of a warrior empire, who once believed in nothing but pride and power, now stood at the edge of regret. He saw what humans carried, the silent strength he once mocked, and he knew deep in his heart that his refusal had brought his people to the edge of ruin. Karath turned to the stars, his voice low. "If I could take back my laughter, I would." But the stars gave no answer, only silence, only the memory of his refusal. The turning point had come. The path of pride was breaking. And Karath, once unshakable, now carried the weight of regret heavier than any chain. The silence in Karath's command chamber was heavy. For days he avoided his council. He avoided his warriors. He even avoided his own reflection. The battles had scarred him. The loss of his friend had broken him. And the sight of humans saving his people had burned him with shame. He could no longer escape the truth. Alone, his empire would fall. Karath stood before the great window of his ship, his eyes locked on the stars. He thought of the human commander he had once mocked. He thought of the calm words spoken without fear. "One day, you will see what makes humans strong." Now Karath saw it, and now he knew he needed it. Summoning his council, Karath's voice was low but unshaken. "We cannot fight this war alone," he said, his claws tight on the table. His advisors roared in outrage. "Never," one shouted. "To beg for help is dishonor." "Humans are weak," another spat. "They will only drag us down." But Karath's eyes silenced them. "I have seen their strength," he growled, his voice like thunder. "They bleed for those who mocked them. They fight for those who abandoned them. They rise even when crushed." The council fell quiet, fear in their eyes. For the general who once laughed at humans now spoke of them with respect. It was decided in secret. Karath would meet the humans not as an overlord, not as a warrior demanding tribute, but as a leader asking for mercy. The meeting took place on a neutral station near the ruins of Karun. Karath walked down the metal halls with heavy steps. Every beat of his heart reminded him of the shame he carried, the refusal, the laughter, the pride, and now the regret. At the end of the hall, the human commander waited. The same calm eyes, the same steady stance. Time had passed. Battles had been fought, but the man looked unchanged. Karath stopped, towering over him, yet for the first time feeling smaller. "I come not as the proud fool you once met," Karath said, his voice rough. "I come as a leader of a broken people. I come to ask what I once rejected." He bowed his head, claws trembling. "Help us." The hall was silent. Karath's warriors held their breath, expecting mockery, expecting revenge. But the human commander did not smile with triumph. He did not spit with anger. Instead, he stepped forward and placed a hand on Karath's arm. "You were never our enemy," he said softly. "You were family, even when you did not see it." Karath's chest tightened. Mercy, he thought. The humans gave mercy where his people would have given only scorn, and that mercy struck deeper than any blade. The alliance was sealed not with contracts of greed, not with promises of power, but with a single act of forgiveness. The humans opened their fleets, their supplies, their soldiers. They fought not as servants, not as tools, but as equals. Karath stood beside the human commander as fleets gathered. He watched humans and his own warriors fight shoulder to shoulder. At first, his people sneered, unwilling to trust the frail figures beside them. But then, battle after battle, they saw it too. The humans never broke, they never left anyone behind. They fought with unity that spread like fire. In the heat of war, one of Karath's captains fell. His ship torn apart, a human vessel risked destruction to pull survivors from the wreck. When the captain, half-broken, asked why, the human simply said, "Because no one deserves to be left behind." Stories spread across the empire. Warriors who once mocked now whispered with awe. The weak creatures they laughed at were saving them, Again and again, Karoth listened to these whispers, and each one pierced his heart with both pride and sorrow. Pride, for his people were learning. Sorrow, for he had taken so long to see one night after a long battle. Karoth stood with the human commander on the deck of a battered ship. The stars burned above them, silent witnesses to their fragile alliance. Karoth spoke quietly. I laughed at you once. I thought mercy was weakness. I thought unity was a joke. The human smiled, his eyes calm. And now? He asked. Karoth's claws tightened, his voice shook. Now I see it is the only strength that lasts. The alliance grew stronger with each battle. The humans shared not only weapons but hope. They taught Karoth's warriors that courage was not just facing death, but facing it for another. They taught him that strength was not just in claws and blades, but in hearts that refused to break. And so the general who once refused, who once mocked, now walked a different path. A path built on regret, forgiveness, and unity. A path that would lead his people not to pride, but to survival. The war was far from over. The Vorga still cast their shadow, but for the first time in many long years, Karoth felt something in his chest he had almost forgotten. Hope. The alliance stood at the edge of destiny. Human fleets and Karoth's warriors gathered side by side, their banners shining together against the black of space. The Vorga came like a storm, endless and merciless, their ships spreading across the stars like a sea of shadows. This would be the final battle, the one that would decide not only the Empire's survival, but the fate of countless worlds. Karoth stood on the bridge of his flagship. His armor was scarred, his eyes heavy, but his spirit carried a fire he had never known before. Beside him stood the human commander, calm as always, steady as a stone. They shared no words at first, only a silent nod, enemies once. Now brothers in war. The clash began with thunder. Vorga ships cut into their lines with ruthless speed. Karoth's warriors roared, their cannons blazing. Human ships moved with quiet unity, weaving through fire, protecting every gap. Together they held. Karoth watched the humans fight. Every time a ship faltered, another moved to shield it. Every time soldiers fell, others carried them from the fire. The humans fought not for glory, not for pride, but for tomorrow. And Karoth felt his chest swell with something strange. Not just respect, but gratitude. The battle raged for hours. The Vorga pressed harder, sending waves of ships. But the alliance refused to fall. Karoth's warriors, inspired by human courage, fought with new strength for the first time. They fought not for honor, but for each other. In the heart of the storm, Karoth himself took to the ground. He led his warriors into a burning colony, the Vorga swarming through the streets. Beside him, human marines ran into the fire, their faces pale but their eyes fierce. Together they stood in front of civilians. Forming a wall of flesh and steel, Karoth swung his blade with fury. Every strike carried the weight of his regret. Every roar carried the pain of his pride. The humans beside him fired until their weapons melted. When one fell, another took his place. And in that moment, Karoth finally understood. Strength was not in standing alone. Strength was in standing together. Strength was not in refusing help. Strength was in giving it. Even when nothing was asked in return, the Vorga began to falter. Their endless storm broke against the wall of unity. For every life lost, the humans and Karoth's warriors pushed harder, and when the sun of that broken world rose at last, the Vorga retreated into the dark, defeated. The battlefield was quiet. Bodies lay among the ruins. Ships burned in orbit. The price of victory heavy in every heart. Karoth stood in silence, looking at the human commander beside him. The man's armor was shattered, his face lined with exhaustion, yet his eyes still carried the same calm strength. Karoth lowered his head, his voice trembling. I refused you once, he said, the words heavy like chains. I mocked you, I laughed at you. I thought you were weak, that was my greatest mistake. And it will haunt me forever, but you saved us. Not with pride, not with hatred, but with mercy. The human placed a hand on his arm again. The same gesture as before. Mercy is not weakness, he said softly. It is the greatest strength we have. Karoth turned to his warriors, his voice carrying across the ruins. Remember this day, he roared. Not as a day of conquest, not as a day of pride, but as the day we learned from those we once mocked. We stand because the humans stood for us. We live because they gave their lives for us. Let their strength be our guide. Let their mercy be our future. The warriors bowed their heads. The humans bowed theirs in return. And in that moment, enemies became family. Races once divided stood as one. That night, under the quiet stars, Karoth sat alone. He remembered the first meeting. His laughter, his scorn. His refusal, he closed his eyes, whispering to the silence. If I could speak to that human commander again, I would not laugh. I would not mock. I would thank him, for he showed me the truth. Strength is not in standing above others. It is in lifting them when they fall. And so the story of Karoth was remembered across the galaxy. The proud general who refused a human, the warrior who mocked mercy, and the leader who learned, through regret and redemption, that humanity's true power was not their ships, not their weapons, not their bodies, but their hearts. The hearts that could turn even enemies into brothers, the hearts that could change the fate of a galaxy.